8 years ago, my sister got pregnant. The father wasn't involved and my sister didn't want the baby. But she also couldn't bring herself to terminate or adopt out to strangers. She approached me and my now ex-husband and asked if we would be willing to adopt her child. We weren't sure as we were concerned this would lead to issues down the line, but my sister insisted that it wouldn't, so we ultimately agreed. Before Lucy was a year old, my husband left us both because my sister lied about Lucy's father. When Lucy was 4, I got together with my wife, and we married last year. My sister has said that seeing me and my wife with Lucy, who is now 7, confirms to her that she made the right decision. When I first adopted Lucy, my husband and I told my sister that we wanted multiple children, which she said she was fine with at the time, but now my wife and I are looking into our options and my sister objects. My sister has been staying with us since July because her boyfriend kicked her out. She keeps asking Lucy if she's sure she wants siblings. Lucy has said that she does, and telling us she's worried we won't be able to give Lucy what she needs. And then today happened. We had an online consultation with a fertility clinic to talk about sperm donation. We told my sister about it and asked her to keep an eye on Lucy while we talked. The Wi-Fi went randomly on and off 3 times during the session, booting us out of the call each time. The 3rd time, my wife went to check it and saw my sister holding the power cord, and Lucy trying to plug it back in. Lucy saw my wife and said, "Auntie keeps turning the Wi-Fi off." Wife plugged it back in. But we could no longer get into the session, and we got an email from the doctor saying that if the Wi-Fi is going to be this bad, then maybe we should try a more local clinic, as we can't do online consultations. When we confronted my sister, she admitted that she wants Lucy to be an only child so she has 100% of our undivided attention, and then said in a sarcastic tone, "Forgive me for only wanting what's best for my daughter." To which we responded that Lucy isn't her daughter. Things escalated until I said that my sister should go stay with our parents, and my wife drove her to their place. Since leaving a few hours ago, she's apologized and begged to come back, and my parents have also asked me to take her back. But I've refused. They've all called me an arsehole for kicking my own sister out after one argument, because now she's unable to get to work. No car and too far to walk, and she's back in her childhood room while at our place she had a studio to herself behind the house. My husband Derek and I have been married for 3 years, together for 7 total. Several years ago, about 6 now, I guess, I worked closely with a male coworker, Paul, that Derek was never fond of. Paul and I never had an inappropriate relationship. Derek's jealousy wasn't completely out of nowhere. I get why he felt that way. Those couple years were a perfect storm of relationship stress. I was working long hours. We were living apart after trying and failing to move in together. Our relationship was still fairly new. And then you add in a handsome coworker I had to spend long hours with and saw more than my boyfriend at the time. Paul was the source of several fights. Again, we never did anything that wasn't completely kosher. Eventually I told Derek he needed to trust me and get over it, or we were going to have to break up. He said he would stop worrying, and for the most part things were good. When Paul transferred out of state a few months later, things were really good. There were no worries at all, and our relationship has been amazingly strong ever since. This last weekend, my husband went out with a couple friends to some bars and a football game. When he came home, he was pretty wasted. We talked for a bit, and he mentioned how a friend of his had told him that he broke up with his girlfriend because she cheated on him. I commented on how that was a bummer and good for him for finding out before they got too serious. Derek, however, had a different take on it. He said it was a shame because they had seemed like a good couple, and if they really loved each other his friend could move past the cheating. Just like he had with me. At first I thought my husband was admitting to cheating on me, and asked him what he meant. He told me he always knew that Paul and I had slept together at least once all those years ago. But he knew I was the one for him and forgave me. I told Derek that I had never so much as even hugged Paul, except maybe at his going away party, let alone slept with him. Derek sort of just patted me on the arm, said of course, and passed out. The next morning I asked him about the conversation and he said it was okay, he had forgiven me, it wasn't even an issue. I again stressed that I had never cheated on him with anybody and I needed him to believe me. He sort of did the same, of course you didn't, babe wink thing again, and went to work. Every time I've tried to talk to him since, he won't hear me out. I'm this close to losing it with him. I need him to know that I never cheated, and I'm hurt that he thinks I would do something like that. What do I do? Do I just let him have this since it's not really hurting anything, or what? I don't want my own husband to think so little of me that he thinks I would cheat. That's not who I am. I am a 27 years old male. My fiancé, she's 25, has an obvious permanent burn scar from an accident that caused her mother, her only parent, to pass away from injury. My fiancé had a long recovery. It's been 7 years. The scar is on her collarbone. It goes down her chest but isn't showing. Unless she's wearing scoop / square tops. She often wears hoodies / jackets to cover up. She puts this cream, I don't know what ladies call it, but it's supposed to tone skin color or something. I'm not sure, but my fiancé calls it foundation that is 1 degree brighter than her skin color. I absolutely adore her. She's pretty, smart, ambitious, and the list goes on. What happened was unfortunate, and I'm glad she's at peace with herself and more confident. My family love her. How can they not? She's a member of the family. My mom makes sure she takes part in every family function and things like shopping and decorating other things. However, my sister made comments about my fiancé's scar several times. I've called her out on her behavior several times to get her to stop because she was hurting me before my fiancé with her backhanded and insensitive comments. I told my fiancé she had every right to cut my sister out and not deal with her bullshit, but she has been forgiving and respectful of my entire family. Our wedding is in February. My fiancé went shopping for the wedding dress. This is where the issue started. My fiancé showed the wedding dress to my sister. I didn't see it, but I was told it was a spaghetti strap dress. My fiancé likes this stuff. Anyways, my sister saw it and went nuts. She started criticizing her choice and said that she should have gotten a high neck or a jewel wedding dress to cover up the scar. She argued with my fiancé about it. I went to my family's house and I confronted her. I yelled at her after she told me my fiancé needed to return the dress and get a proper one so that guests won't focus on her burn scar and use it as the topic of conversation and gossip. I told her that she's not invited to our wedding. She isn't welcome to my wedding with this entitled attitude of hers and her insensitivity and disrespect. We argued for half an hour, then I left. In exactly an hour, my mom and dad called and berated me, saying my sister was crying after I uninvited her and that I had no right to univindi her. She's my sister and was just trying to help out and give an advice and avoid any unnecessary drama at the wedding. My mom said my fiancé can keep the dress but suggested to wear a bridal shawl as a neutral solution. I stopped responding to my mom's calls and texts after that. Family members were upset my sister was uninvited and wanted me to invite her again, because this will make family look bad in front of outsiders and guests. About a week after my post, I planted a wall of blackberries and raspberries at the 2 sides of my garden facing the driveway, about 30 centimeters from the edge, so no overhanging branches. On the other side of the berry wall, I planted lots stuff like strawberries and tomatoes. To reach the tomatoes and strawberries from the driveway, you have either go through the fruit bushes or walk up to my house. Walk about 2 m along the side of the house and my windows, and then walk into my actual garden. Not something you do by mistake. For about 2 weeks it was somewhat quiet, but I still found the kids on my driveway every single days. As far as I know, they did not enter the garden and I hadn't noticed them walking around my house anymore. So I figured the bushes were working. About 1 week ago, berry season started and my bushes are now full of raspberries, and there's lots of strawberries as well. The neighbors noticed. First I caught the boys picking and eating raspberries, so I told them off and dropped them off at home, told their mom I caught them stealing. That's how I see it, even though it's fruit, and that I'd call the cops next time. She huffed and told me to grow up, but took the boys inside anyway. After that it was quiet up until yesterday afternoon, when I went out for a while and found the dad and his 2 sons right in the middle of my garden when I returned, clearing my bushes and plants. I didn't even confront them, just called the cops from a distance as they hadn't noticed me yet, and started filming them after making the call. Luckily 2 cops showed up after 10 minutes or so, and they confronted the neighbor as they were still picking berries. They told them they were trespassing and that the berry picking was in fact considered stealing and that I could press charges. For the first time I noticed a bit of fear in my neighbor, He was having trouble finding his words and kept looking back at his house. I guess hoping his wife would show to yell at the cops. They all went inside with the cops, so I just went home as well. After a while the cops came by and asked me if I wanted to press charges. I asked them if they felt like they scared the neighbor enough to stay away. I got a small smile and yes, about him, but the wife had just kept shouting at them and her husband about the little. Living next door. I told them no for now, asked them if I'd be allowed to get an extra camera set up on the wall between my garden and the road, to cover the entire front garden plus driveway. They said that's allowed as long as it's on my side of the wall. So, now I'm getting an extra camera installed. One neighbor knows I'm done messing around, but his wife isn't there yet, and if I ever catch any of them again, the cops will be called and possible charges will follow.